out there. It's out
So
there.
then it's public.
That's my.
All right, so good afternoon.
This meeting is being recorded.
I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and start the webinar.
Good evening. Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements.
Miriam, it sounds like the sound went off.
It happened when you muted yourself.
Yeah, it doesn't, there's no sound.
Miriam, it's we can't hear you. Yeah, there we go.
Let me go ahead and start.
You're going to start the recording again? Okay.
Good evening. Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being webcast on Comcast TV channel 15 and live streamed on the city's YouTube.
Okay. All
So
right.
they got the sound but no video this time.
Okay. Let's see if we could do it again. Let's go ahead and.
Got to Zoom.
All right, we're going to start again. This is the third time. It should work.
We'll have sound and video.
Yes. Here we go.
Nothing.
Good evening. Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being webcast on Comcast TV channel 15 and live streamed on the city's YouTube channel at https://www.youtube.com/user/city of Hayward and on the city website at https://hayward.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. The mayor will call upon members of the city council, city staff, and other speakers by name and ask that they state their names before giving comments or remarks. Individuals participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. City council members and members of the public participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature, and the mayor will call upon them at the appropriate time. Members participating via teleconference wishing to speak should dial *9, and they will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received by email at list-mayor-council@hayward-ca.gov city clerk at hayward-ca.gov, or via e-comment by 3 p.m. will be distributed to the City Council and staff, published on the city's meeting and agenda center under documents received after published agenda, and entered into the record. Documents received after 3 p.m. through the adjournment of the meeting will be included as part of the meeting record and published the following day. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date. Public members wishing to speak with the City Council can send an email to list-mayor-council@hayward-ca.gov or cityclerk@hayward-ca.gov.
And with that, I will call this meeting to order. And I will ask Councilmember Lamnon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. And we have a flag in our city clerk, Miriam Lenz's window. So together we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews,
Present.
Councilmember Lamnon,
Present.
Councilmember Marquez,
Present.
Councilmember Salinas,
Present.
Councilmember Wahab,
Here.
Councilmember Cermeño.
I am present.
Thank you, Mayor Halliday.
Here.
Thank you. All 7 members present.
Great. So this is a special meeting of the City Council devoted to really one item, and that is a work session on the council member handbook. We're going to be reviewing sections of the handbook and providing direction to staff regarding any updates or changes that we think are needed. This was an item that was originally going to be discussed, I believe, at our meeting on one of the Saturday meetings was
February 20th, I believe.
February 20th, and we didn't get to it. So we're going to do it tonight, and we will take the public comments tonight will be limited to items on the agenda, which is this item on the handbook, and we will have them at the end of the meeting, but we will have some. So with that, we will go right into our item. I think I'll just turn it over to the city manager to start us off.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good to see everyone this evening. We did invite Julia Novak to come back and help facilitate this conversation so that all of you can participate actively, and the mayor doesn't have to try and run the meeting and participate and share her feedback and comments. So I'm glad to have Julia back. And just wanted to, I think there had been a poll that was done prior to the council retreat on February 20th, and I'm just trying to pull up the staff report, which is taking very long to pull up. I apologize. I was going to run through the sections that council members had expressed an interest in reviewing.
Oh.
Apparently, I cannot pull up the staff report on my iPad. So
I have an agenda from the prior meeting. Did you just want me to read the?
That would be fine. If you would like to just read the topics, that would be great. I apologize for not having.
Yeah. So basically, the ones that multiple individuals expressed an interest in discussing were council referrals, boards, commissions, committees, and task force. City council in general, there is a section near the beginning of the handbook about the city council, council committees, and policy regarding city council expression. And then at least one person expressed an interest in the following: council liaison, motions, ordinances, proclamation, quasi-judicial hearings, and rules, decorum, and order. So those were the items that people called out in that poll. So shall we turn it over to Julia, and she can...
That would be great. She can take us through, and it probably makes the most sense, I think, just to run through maybe the order of how many people voted, maybe, because that might be, Julia, you're on mute. I'll let you tell us how you would think it would be best to facilitate.
at first I did have it organized that way, but then we were going from page 34 to 48 to 22, and it seemed very discombobulated. So what we've done, and I thought what we would do tonight, is go ahead and go through these items in order of appearance in your workbook. So the first 5 that multiple people wanted to speak in, we would speak to. We'd go through the handbook in that order. And my colleague Catherine Carter is with me again, and she's going to share her screen. And our thought is we have the documents in front of us. Hopefully you have the council handbook there for your reference as well. And we're going to take some notes on the screen just to make sure we're catching the concepts that you want to have captured. We will edit the document and send strike changes back to Kelly and her team to finalize and bring back to you all. But the purpose today is just to be able to capture a sense of the council on what issues you wanted to discuss and changes possibly considered to the handbook. Does that sound good?
Yes. And to clarify, we won't be making any changes tonight. Any suggested changes will come back to us for action at a future council meeting.
Yep. So we're just going to try to capture what the sense of the group is as we go. So we'll just go in order. The first, so we'll go city council, then the policy on council expression, referrals, which is the one that most people were interested in, and then committees, boards, commissions, committees, and task forces. And then we'll see where we are. Okay. So the city council section begins on page 2 of the council handbook. There are, this is multiple pages. It goes through page 5. And I didn't have any indication of what in this section people wanted to talk about. But if anyone wanted to, kind of my question to you all is, what issues do we need to address this evening for you in this section? So it includes, vacancies, officers, eligibility, not holding other offices, your training requirements, compensation, benefits, and harassment and retaliation.
Now, who?
Yeah.
I didn't particularly jot this down, so I have no problem with it. I don't know who else did. Maybe they can tell us what their concerns are.
There are a couple hands raised.
I also didn't select this, but I do want to say, just considering that since the handbook is relatively long, did we grab more information in the survey? I don't believe the survey was designed that way. It was just kind of like the larger section. So I do think that's going to be a problem if we keep doing it, going through each subsection, if you will.
Yeah, well, we can, maybe the thing to do here, and I see Councilmember Marquez has her hand up, so maybe we'll just see if she has something in particular, and if not, I'll kind of go through the sections, and then someone can say something if they have a comment. I don't have additional detail though. Councilmember Marquez?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I just noticed on page 2, the first paragraph under City Council, it doesn't mention being appointed to the council, and that's happened numerous times in the last, I'd say 15 to 20 years. So just wanted to clarify that as being one method as a way a person can serve on the council. And then the elective officers, just making sure that the language is clear that they're not sworn in until after the election has been certified. And I think that's at the very bottom of page 2.
Okay.
Those are my only input for that page.
And let me ask if, Julia, did you get a copy of the agenda questions and answers log that came out this afternoon?
I did.
Okay, and I think that part that that's just speaking, Sarah? Was that? No? Was that? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry. I think that, and that came up in this, and I think the way it was, I don't know who made the amendment. That might have been our city clerk, but I think it should be except as otherwise provided. Elective officers shall hold office for a term of 4 years from the Tuesday following their installation. Is that the same part that you were just talking about? Is that Elisa?
Yes.
And even that doesn't sound right, because to me, that means the following Tuesday.
I think it's just after they've been sworn in, right after they take the oath.
Right, because they're not sworn in at the beginning of the meeting, and then they are sworn in, and then we usually have one item, and it's the election of the mayor pro tem after they're sworn in. So they're really taking office right after they're sworn in. And as long as that's what that means in the way it was. I think you should take out from the elected officers shall hold office for a term of 4 years following their installation.
So take out
from all of that about from or and after the first Tuesday, just following their installation.
All right, got that. Any other comments on this section?
Yeah, just for clarity, the appointment process, because it talks about vacancy and then it talks about, I just wanted to clarify with Councilmember Marquez.
So I guess you want to see a description of when a vacancy would occur. That's also missing. Is that what you're getting at?
More in the sense of it says on the notes on the screen now, first paragraph doesn't mention being appointed. The first paragraph being the elective officers of the very first paragraph, or the vacancy first paragraph.
So it's not in the first paragraph, and then the second, the vacancy, it should describe how a vacancy would come about, which would then lead to the option
for appointment. Okay.
So there needs to be more information there as well.
So
yeah.
The first sentence under vacancy says, an office becomes vacant when the incumbent thereof dies, resigns, or is removed under recall proceedings, etc.
That's not the only way. Someone could be elected into another office. So if someone is on the council, run for mayor, and their term isn't out, and they get elected mayor, then there's 2 years left on their council seat.
Yeah, she's right about that.
They can run for another office. So those aren't the only reasons why a vacancy can be created. So we need to elaborate.
Okay. Do you think it's better to try to list all the reasons, or just to say?
I think the appointment one is important, because in my lifetime, it's happened 3 times. So it is common practice in Hayward.
Right.
We also saw a bad reaction to the most recent appointment process in the city, so close to the election, because of somebody holding 2 spots. So I think appointment should be a separate, or at least more clearly defined here.
Maybe it's particularly, maybe the first thing is if a council member is elected to the office of mayor or to another elected body and has to vacate their seat or something, so I think just being clear about, because that's actually where most of our vacancies have arisen from.
Yes.
So we can put that first.
Yeah, there's been at least 3 in the last 15 years.
Okay.
And I just, I'm sorry, I was looking for my hand, but also in that same section, no appointment to fill a vacancy in an elective office shall be made during such time prior to a general municipal election that nomination papers may be filed for candidates seeking office at said election. Does that cover if that particular office isn't up for election that year, and would, I feel like that's just a little unclear and incomplete. If someone were to, resign or, God forbid, die, who wasn't up for, say in September of an election year in which their office wasn't up,
I think, could a vacancy be filled until the next election, which is every 2 years? Is that what you're getting at, Mayor?
Well, this says that you can't do it that way. You can't fill the vacancy, but wouldn't wouldn't you want to put it on that election, but then maybe you couldn't if the filing period.
If the filing period had ended, you probably can't.
Yeah, I see. That September, the filing period would have ended. What if it were July?
And then you probably could, and it would probably be for a separate, because we've already got the ballot underway, but it would probably be for a separate seat. It would be for 2 years.
That election would then be put on that ballot.
Probably. That's my reading of that.
We'll handle that when we come to it. And
hopefully we will not have to come to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other concepts in this section what we'd like to bring up?
I have a couple minor ones. Vacancy, very first paragraph, dies kind of harsh. Maybe can we replace it with passes away or dies? I don't know. Can we find the synonym for it? And then it says the very last paragraph, or fails to attend, the very last sentence, I'm sorry, it fails to attend the meetings of the body of which the incumbent is a member of for a like period. Can we define the like period there? Is it 6
I think
meetings?
it's 60 consecutive days. Yeah.
60 consecutive days, but there are no meetings in 60 consecutive days. So maybe I'm just thinking that it would be clearer if it said missed 10 meetings, 12 meetings, something on those lines. Just throwing it out.
10 days. I hear you.
Also, to Councilmember Zermeño's point, I don't believe that this is in here, and I don't think any of us have to deal with it, but military service, that should be highlighted because there are obviously, I see, for example, in other places, people chiming in from across the seas, right? Obviously, it's like early in the morning or late in the evening for them. So just being able to acknowledge that, you could still serve your country and also serve on council or something else.
Yeah, is there any ability to, would we add unless excused due to the absence being due to military service or some other, I don't know. I hate to see us totally changing the rules, but on the other hand, suppose somebody became very ill and had to undergo some, major procedure, but, was going to be able to come back at the end of it or something like that. So do we have?
And for that, I also think like leave of absence is also not included, properly. There are some, personal reasons that people take leave of absences. Some cities do for roughly a year, some do for 6 months, depends.
And does your charter allows for that? Some places the issue becomes that there's certain segments of the community that aren't then perhaps being represented at regular meetings. And so the balance there is the individual who might have a need for a leave of absence, and how do you balance the need to also make sure certain voices are represented on the dais. So that's the
it does have a provision for being excused by the city council for meetings. So I think if the council decided to vote on, a leave of absence, we're not district elections. So I think the issue of representation probably isn't as problematic as in some other communities where there are districtly elected council members. So
yeah, if you have a provision for as a body excusing the absence, it's one of those where you're probably better off not getting real explicit and just allowing the governing body at the moment to make those decisions.
Yeah, I would agree. Be less explicit, as you say, and leave it a little more open, unless if there is, but there should be a provision for the council to excuse an absence. And I would tend to, keep it at the 60 days. I think doesn't it refer to something like being out of the area? Well, I know there's a section that's talked about out of the country. Well, that's not
out
really.
of the state. No, out of the state.
out of the state.
I see Councilmember Andrews has her hand up.
Yes, I was just wondering if someone can educate me on what happens if there's an excused absence and there's only 6 to vote. Do you appoint someone in the interim, like to avoid split votes, or how does that work?
We probably wouldn't appoint somebody until the position was filled by the council. I mean, I don't remember anybody ever taking a leave of absence. So, but I don't
had meetings where
somebody to fill it.
members have been absent where there have been split votes on items, and sometimes then it's, council members can ask for reconsideration of an item for when all 7 members are present again.
Mm-hmm. I just wonder if it's a long leave. Like I know people leave or not present once in a while for a meeting, but if it's a approved leave for an extended period of time, how does that impact our items?
I don't think there's any prohibition for the council in terms of doing a temporary appointment if the council chose to do that. And maybe the city attorney wants to weigh in on that.
Thank you. If you can hear me, there is no proxy voting permitted in the charter for a member who has an excused absence. Also, regarding excused absences, they can exceed a period longer than 60 days or 3 regular meetings, but the council would probably need to take repeated actions to approve the absence. And at some point, the council will probably have to make a judgment as to whether or not it's in the public interest to permit that.
And we do have a lot of times where we only have 6 people. I mean, there are a lot of situations where one member has to recuse themselves. You need 4 votes to, pass an item. So it's either 4 of 6 or 4 of 7.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Next item.
Anything else on this one? Ready to go? All right. Then we'll move on to expression. This begins on page 17. What needs to be addressed here?
I don't know if this was the, if I put this somewhere else, but I did wonder if this section needed to be updated. This is the section. Somewhere we need to update reflecting the new laws related to social media and the training that we had at the end of the February 20th session.
That's a good point. That wouldn't.
This is more about legislative items that, the council taking positions on legislative items. So, but not so much, it might be more under like council conduct potentially.
It's actually under Brown Act, and we don't actually have a section on the Brown Act in the handbook, but we have to operate under it. That's an interesting point because we really don't cover that, but it is something that we all are aware of that we have to, we have to follow. Maybe there should be something about the Brown Act somewhere in here. I just read through it today again, and I don't remember seeing anything about the Brown Act.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Robert rules of order are mentioned, but not,
Can I highlight something in this section?
Please.
The part where it says city council should not be given, or expression of city council expression should not be given on state, federal, and international issues. One, I'm thinking of our random proclamations or resolutions that we do. Number two, even sanctuary status, that kind of is directly tied to President Trump and policies there. I just want to highlight that I don't believe that we've followed it, if that's the case.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think, I would make the argument there. It's more about whether or not it has an effect on the administration of local affairs of the city of Hayward. I think for the sanctuary city policy, that was specific guidance to our police department in terms of cooperation with ICE. So I would say it did have a nexus to the local affairs of the city. But I think this is to, for example, drilling for oil in some foreign country. Does that really have an impact on the local affairs of the city of Hayward? I think that's what it's meant to cover. So that's I think what the differentiation I would make on this particular policy is, that it says some of which have no effect upon the administration of local affairs of the city of Hayward.
And I think we think about that, and I think most of what we've done, or all, if not all of it, could be interpreted as having some effect upon the administration of local affairs. Including that, like say the anti racism policy that against Asian. You know what I want to say? We're opposed to
Asian hate.
Yes, that's it. When we're talking about our own residents, really, that in the city of Hayward, this is, not acceptable to, treat, residents of the city of Hayward or visitors or people in the city of Hayward. That's what we're really saying there. We're not trying to say, we're against it everywhere, but I don't think we're trying. I think there is a local angle that we have. Whereas I know I was recently, asked about whether we would make a statement about politics in India, which, we may have opinions on, but to me, that's outside our realm, politics in India.
Okay. Maybe we could just make it a little bit more clear. I'll also say that the language, it's kind of written as like an ordinance, because it says whereas now therefore be it resolved. Maybe if we can kind of clean up the language for like normal handbook language rather than ordinance language as well. So just highlighting that as well.
Is that the only place in the handbook where I didn't notice that. That might be, you could reference, that must be from a resolution that we passed at some point. So we could reference that.
Apparently in 1977, that resolution was passed. That's referenced there. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just jumping in. I should have raised my hand. Are we doing a raising hand process, or are we just jumping in?
Jump in.
Thank you.
I'll wait.
No, go ahead.
Jump in. Oh, I see. Lisa's got handed up. What do you want to do, Julia? You're actually running this.
The problem is my hand raise feature keeps going away when I look at a different screen. So yeah, we've got a bunch of hands up. So, and including Miriam.
Yes, and I'm sorry. I know there was a question about the Brown Act, if we had language about the Brown Act, and that is actually on page 18, but I believe we need to expand on that. But there are two references on page 18 about the Brown Act. Just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
All right. So then Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, and I apologize. I did have a couple more items for the previous section, so I'll be brief. On page 5 under benefits, I want to add not only are council members allowed to benefit from PERS, but those of us that are already in the PERS system, we have to actually participate in a different plan, which is PARS, Public Agency Retirement Services. So just to be completely transparent with the public, that is an additional it's in place of PARS. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And then on page 9, under the complaint procedure, it mentions a council member has to go to the mayor or the mayor pro tem. Just wanted to see if we could add or the former mayor pro tem, just to give full flexibility on whom that complaint might be coming from. So just to make sure that it's covered, that they could either file a complaint with the mayor pro tem, or the former mayor pro tem. And that's all I had for the previous section.
Question for you, Councilmember Marquez, the former mayor pro tem piece of it, how far back?
The most recent, so past serving.
Is it possible that that person would not be on the council?
Mm-hmm.
So
It could. So the person who served prior to the current, who is currently on the council, however we could best word that.
Another member of the council.
Yeah.
If they prefer, for whatever reason, mayor or another member of the governing body with assistance.
Yeah, I'm just trying to protect, the complaint could be from the mayor pro tem. So just to give, that's all.
Well, if the complaint is from the mayor pro tem, they should go to the mayor.
Yes, but if it's
about the mayor,
against the mayor. So yes, that's why I'm just trying to cover our bases to ensure that.
Option. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Probably won't happen, but just in case. And then I'll skip to the current section. So on page 20, I don't know if this necessarily has to be in the handbook, but just for staff to be conscientious, it rarely happens, but I think it's really important to set expectations from outside presenters, whether that's 15, 20 minutes. We've had a handful that went on for like 30, 40 minutes, and that's just way too long. So if we can give some kind of format for staff and outside presentations, just to be concise.
We don't have that section, so we'll add that. We don't have a section on the agenda, but so let's stick with the section here on the page 17, the policy regarding city council expression. Page 20 is a new section on the council agenda, so we'll have to.
Sorry, I skipped ahead. Okay, yes.
So Councilmember Salinas, you wanted to jump in on this. Thank you.
Now I completely forgot what I was going to talk about, but that's okay. I think what was said is good.
Okay, Mayor, you had something here?
Yeah, just was going to comment on what Miriam said, because we were talking about the social media policy that is actually now a new part of the Brown Act. But then what she's referencing is that talks about the Brown Act is really more about meeting notices, I think. And yes, that is in accordance with the Brown Act, but I just don't know if we need a section that's just
you
talks about some of the other limitations on us that that the Brown Act places, including the new part about social media. But
it seems like you have to comply with the Brown Act, and then the council handbook is here to give you all guidance on other items. So I'm not sure how much you need to both referenced. So
that's true.
Okay.
Can we just circle back to the comment about PARS? I think maybe some folks may not know exactly what that is. So PARS is a supplemental retirement system. And so, for example, if a council member is an employee of another public agency, not the city of Hayward, and is participating in PERS, you cannot be an employee of two PERS agencies and collect or basically accrue service from two PERS agencies. So you have to participate in a different retirement structure, and that's what PARS is. It's sort of like a supplemental retirement structure. So I just want to make sure that we can just make sure to clarify that language, including it in the benefits section, so that it's clear that, council members cannot basically be PERS eligible employees of multiple agencies.
Right.
Okay. All right. Shall we go on then to?
I have one item, if I may.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, the last paragraph on page 17 dealing with the international issues speaks about this particular policy is not intended for any one person to make a public presentation on city council. There was one instance last year where a city council member stated a position and used letterhead of the city, and it made it seem as if it was a city proclamation, although it was hers only. Do we need to have some kind of a language as to what would be the penalty for a council member taking such an action? Using, let's say I'm against the Chinese killing all those trees, and I'm going to make a statement because I like trees. And then I use the letterhead, and it makes it seem as if it's a city council decision. Should I be penalized? Should that be stated somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
China just came up. China's not destroying their trees, but that just came up.
Yeah. And I don't know if you all have a penalty section for all of this, but that's, I mean, this is one of those things where it comes down to pure accountability. How are you all going to hold one another responsible and accountable to these rules that you agree to? So maybe we kind of hold that as a question mark, but I see Councilmember Wahab has raised her hand. Is that on this topic, Councilmember Wahab, or is in response to Councilmember?
Yeah, to our city manager. I'm unaware of something like this happening. Not exactly clear on the example. Do we have that example?
I am not recalling the example right off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and do some research on it.
It happened in Fremont with Teresa.
Okay. So I thought it was this council that you were referencing.
Okay.
No, not in this council. And they were not sure what to do over in Fremont because of it.
Okay. I also just for the reading through this, just real quick, if we can make even the language a little bit clearer on to Councilmember Zermanio's point, just on for example, resolutions, whether it's proclamations, whether it's things like that. I know Councilmember Lamnin has done quite a few proclamations in support of honoring communities. I've done it. I know the rest of council has done it, things like that. And, kind of just saying proclamations, resolutions, defining it, especially since this is, as a new council member, and I know that Councilmember Andrews, new council member, we read this and we're trying to understand it, but because it's still high level and we haven't done it ourselves then, just making it very easy for somebody that's not even part of council to understand, okay, this is what we do. This is, for this section of a proclamation, making it super easy to follow, right? As what is a proclamation? What do we do it for? How do we do it? Who do we work with, right?
Did you go to the link? There's a link in here. I agree with you that it is a little confusing.
Yeah, and the link is fine if you have it like this, but then I think that if we can have like an appendix at the back saying, please refer to how to do proclamations, appendix number A or letter A, right? So just making it just very easy to follow through as like a real right, if you will.
Sure, absolutely. I think looking through the language with sort of a common sense lens, I just because we have an employee who knew what happened in Fremont, it was the spouse of a former mayor who used the Fremont logo on a letter supporting a candidate, which that is actually governed by the FPPC. So anytime you are as a council, you are not as a council member actually even supposed to send out your own individual name or picture on something that is paid for or with the city's logo by yourself. If it's going to go out, it's got to have all 7 of you on that flyer. And that actually could subject you to fines from the FPPC. So that's, and I think there's other rules or state regulations around that. So.
Okay, I want to, we've captured the comment about proclamations on a different slide because we have that, it was coming up, that was on page 23. Is there anything else on page 17? Can we move on from there? Okay, just trying to keep track of things here. Mayor, your hand is still up, but I think it might be from a while ago.
I didn't realize that, yeah, it is.
So there was some comment on page, we didn't have the agenda section as something that we were going to go over. Someone has mentioned the need to give some guidance on presentations. Let's go ahead then and move on to try to figure out what's next. Council referrals. And I know there was a lot. This was the one that most folks indicated they wanted to discuss. It begins on page 26 of the handbook. So what are the issues here that you wanted to bring up under referrals?
Julie, can I jump in real quick? I have just 2 quick items prior to the referral.
So what I want to do, Councilmember Marquez, is these are the sections that a bulk of the council wants to go over tonight. I wanted to get through them, and then we have some other items that people identified. We'll come back to those, but I don't know how much time people have, and I want to make sure we talk about the things that a majority of the group were interested in. Is that okay? Can you just continue? Okay. So page 26. Councilmember Zermino. Yes.
Yes. So my comment on this, I will be very brief. I dislike this new system. I prefer that we go back to the old system. And in essence, the old system was, I would propose planting 5,000 trees in the city of Hayward in 2021. And if 3 other colleagues of mine were to approve it, by voting yes, then it would take place. Before 2018, that was a system that worked, and it worked very well. It was just a matter of, I would like us to study this, and it was always, we'll get 3 other votes. And those other votes came in, fine. No 4 votes, then the referral was dropped. The system is too onerous, and it's a waste of time. Thank you.
Okay, so the issue really becomes that too many people can bring things up without a majority of the council being interested in, therefore taking away staff time for things that the majority of the body would be interested in. And so why are we spinning our wheels? I've seen other communities. Yeah. So
it's a written referral that boils down to the same thing. The referral is presented and we take a vote. Okay. So just do away with it. Just simply bring it out in announcements or public session and then deal with it. Thank you.
Mayor Holliday.
Okay, to respond to that, I think I would be in favor of some changes in the current system. But when you think of, I do agree that the current, that what we changed the system to is a little more transparent to the public. And I think the old system was not very transparent. So maybe we need to look for something in between, because we would bring those up when we would bring them up in the public part of a closed session before COVID and before any of that was televised or online in any way. And it was very informal. There wasn't a record of the vote taken. And I think that, that it worked for us, and I can think of a lot of reasons why it worked for us, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here to Councilmember Zermino, that if we go, that's what I think that the problem was that led us to revise this system somewhat. Now, so could we do something in between that? Like, could we specify that it had to be made at a regular rather than a, rather than at somehow that it needed to be made at a regular meeting, not a closed session meeting. And maybe we, at the time when, we have a referral, something on the agenda now. So maybe you just use that and say, okay, when we get to the referrals, does anyone have a suggestion that they want to make? And then you would make your suggestion about the trees, and then we would, and you would put that in the form of a motion and see if there was a second, and then we would have a vote. And if there were 4 votes in favor, then, but it would be recorded in the minutes. It would be recorded, and it would be, it would be transparent as to who supported and who didn't the suggestion. What about that? Okay. I don't know how. That would be my suggestion, to kind of change, not completely go back to the old way, address some of the concerns there were about that, but go back to more like the old way, where we just do it on the spot as a verbal suggestion by a member making a motion, and then see if 4 people would vote to have it come back.
The Councilmember Salinas, and then Lamnin, and then Marquez.
Thank you. So, I went back and I looked at this, and I, and I went back and forth on this. There is, I do appreciate Councilmember Cermeño's, comment about, there was this time about where council members would bring something to the council, and then get the 4 nods. Whether we did it, I've seen it done right before a closed session where nobody attends meetings. I've seen it done, in open session right before we start. I've seen it done at the end of open session, at midnight, where we're lucky to have 2 people on in the meetings, but at this, and so I've seen it that way, but I think the what I appreciated about that that context was, there was sort of a professional gravitas about bringing items to council, and there was there was this respect that other council members had for each other, where we would bring an issue, and the issues, to much extent, and I'm sure we can, argue this, sometime, but, where the things that we would bring to the council and get 4 nods to, bring on the agenda, they were tightly aligned with, council priorities, council goals. I don't remember, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I don't ever remember something. I don't ever remember something being brought and getting 4 nods that were just so far away from council priorities. And we kind of, and so I want to say that, put that, and then leave it there for a second. But then I also, over the last, several years, I also have seen that gravitas, so to speak, get violated, where we've seen issues just come ramrodded through the council that has taken us, all over the map, whether or not they were aligned with council priorities, but yet, we were sort of moved in this position where we had to, take a position, and then, and act on it, right? So I want to be able to balance that and really respect, the collegiality, the policy making relationship that we have on the council. Now, I'm also a realist. I know that not all 7 of us are going to be, for a lack of a better expression, I don't expect all 7 of us on any council, not just this council, but on any council, that everyone's going to be friends and everyone's going to just, have the same professional, and I'll say it again, gravitas to do these kinds of, to do this. So with that said, I kind of like the referral process, and because what it does is that Well, I like the referral process, but this is what I would like for it to be, though, right? I'd like for the person seeking the referral to seek out 2 other council members. There should be 3 people on board on this, and there should be a proposal, right? A white paper. I mean, I know we put a 2-page, sort of minimum maximum here, but it should be a thoroughly researched, with empirical data, with a thoughtful research document that we can present to 2 other colleagues, get them on board, and that explains the rationale, how they're connected to priorities, how they're connected to the agenda, the policy agenda of the council. And then there should be timelines. I mean, referrals ought not be, voted on 1 week, and then 2 weeks later it should, we get we do a work session, and the next week we do, legislative, and it's voted on. I think that we should be able to there should be a timeline on these things, just as we do other things. Look what we did with some of the development projects, where those development projects go through Economic Development Committee, or they go through the Infrastructure Committee. These things should be vetted just like everything else. So there should be a committee, a committee vetting system embedded in this. So those are the things that I want to see this referral tightened up. If a council member, and I'll end on this, if a council member wants to do a referral, I think the expectation should be join 2 other council members, thoroughly research together as a team, as 3 council members, the policy and the rationale and the link to priorities, and then bring it to the rest of us, and then move forward.
Yeah, I want to try to get some clarity around what you're proposing the change to the existing language be. So are you talking about on the part 1 referral that you want there to be multiple council members before it comes to the council for potential referral for staff work?
Yeah.
And because I don't have your prior documents in front of me, so when you want to go, when Councilman Zermino said he wanted to go back to the old way.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna say no to that. Okay, and because I think it's too easy. It's too easy, and I think if we're gonna pass an ordinance, if we are going to do a policy shift that takes us away from a priority, we should have 3 people on board.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, Councilmember Lynn, and you were next, and then Marquez.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of that, Mark. And I think the piece that I would add to that is, if the council member can't talk to 2 other colleagues because they're on committee about that topic. So for instance, if it's a housing issue, right, the 3 of us can't talk to each other outside of committee, but we also can't talk to the rest of the council. But then we do what was done recently in Budget and Finance, which is that becomes a referral for the budget, for the housing committee, for instance. And we could think a little bit about how do we vet that in a way that doesn't, and that's kind of where I want to focus, is I think there's 2 types of referrals that happen. One is hey, I heard from a neighbor that our fence is down on the corner. Can we get that fixed? And, some of those can go through Access Hayward. Some of those are just a quick thing, or, International Carnation Day is coming up. Hayward is a Carnation City. Can we make a proclamation? Those sort of very simple things that really don't take any staff time, or nothing takes no staff time. But in the scheme of things, there's some time budget buffer for those things. And then, but the problem comes, and this is where I think that the 4 nods more complex, doesn't work, is the things that will, as I think you said at the end there, Mark, pull, or maybe it was Julia, pull resources from something that's already existing. And that's the other piece, is that I think as council, we have to be disciplined about, if we're going to go forward with something that is of substantial resource drain, whether that be money or time or whatever it is, that we have to be willing to give something else up. And I'd like that discussion to be part of making some decision, even if it's just the research phase. And I don't know that I have all of the language worked out about that, but I want to put that into the mix as well.
Well, and as Councilmember Salinas mentioned, I mean, the idea here is first you honor what you've agreed to as your goals. And then if we're going to add something, we've kind of given direction to the organization. So we need to be very, very measured about that. So Councilmember Marquez, did you have some comment here?
Yes, so thank you. I'm also conflicted about this. I do recall some of the referrals prior to 2008 were made in public comment for closed session, but a bulk of them were in the 7 o'clock forum, whether that was in the beginning of the meeting or at the end. And it was a lot more simplified. But the confusion with that, I think, with new members joining, is there was a lot of confusion in terms of what was the actual referral versus what's getting up to speed and getting information. So there needed to be another way to approach it. So that's my recollection of how we started this new referral process. I do feel strongly it's important to have transparency in terms of who voted to support the referral moving forward. But what I'm conflicted with, and we've got to be clear, we pretty much have put a hold on all referrals given the pandemic. So that's been stagnant for well over a year. But the issue is money and resources. So I also agree, we put so much time on the strategic roadmap. We're now looking at updates to our general plan, where we're at in terms of meeting those objectives. And anything that we do in addition is going to take away from that plan. So I would like to see a process where a referral is vetted at the committee level. And I think it has to be very clear in terms of, if there's support to have this new initiative move forward, what's the offset? What's going to come off? What's the delay? What's the cost? And I think oftentimes when we do referrals, people try to simplify it, but truly what they meant is this very comprehensive policy initiative. And that's also what's very confusing, because we start at one point and then it ends up being something significantly greater. So we need to have discipline and focused around that as well.
All right, so I'm hearing a little bit of energy around this from several folks, that we need to make sure we're not just bringing things forward and kind of watering down our policy focus. And this sounds in some ways preventative, because it hasn't been happening in the past year because of the pandemic. So is there anyone who kind of disagrees with this? I got Councilmember Wahab, I see a hand up now. And Councilmember Salinas, your hand I think might still be up if you want to put it down.
Yeah, I just wanted to just insert a quick response to Councilmember Lamnin and Marquez. I absolutely agree with what you said. And I would just add timeline in here somewhere. As we start to really think this out, there should be a timeline attached to this. And I don't know what that is right now, but that should be part of it. And I just wanted to acknowledge Councilmember Cermeño. I mean, I agree. I think the way we used to do it, I think, was, there was power in that. But I think, this, I think, makes us work for it, so to speak. And I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
Yeah. And sorry, but I wanted, Mark, one of the other things you brought up was research. And I didn't want to lose that, because I thought that was an important, sort of the collaborative research point. Thank you.
Councilmember Wahab, for real this time.
Okay, thank you. I know that, and just to be, for transparent for everybody, I know our council has really, a lot of things have stemmed from the referral policy. And I know that that's been kind of the big thorn in our side to a degree on some of the problems that we've had on council. So I am not afraid to say that very openly. And I think that to Councilmember Marquez's point, yeah, I guess for a new council member, it is confusing. It is incredibly hard. I know I struggled with it. I didn't know, I would ask questions and things like that, but it wasn't very clear, nor did this handbook really flesh it out, right? Nor was direction really clearly relayed as well. So I know that this is our area of pain. And I think to Council Member Zermeño, I agree that it's a little bit of a tedious process, and I would like to see a quicker process. I think that there's a happy medium, to be honest with you, that I'm happy to do as well. And I think that a referral should come to the full council personally. It should be a one-pager in some concept as to, I do believe in XYZ and things like that. And in an effort for transparency as well. And I think that once that happens and the council can potentially vote on it, and it doesn't have to be super detailed, but this is the direction. So to Councilmember Zermeño's point of planting trees.
Who's one pager, the council member?
Yes, right. Just because you want to at least have a clear concept of what you're trying to present, not spur of the moment. I spoke to somebody in front of the elevator and this is a great idea, right? So it has to be well thought out to a degree. And after it's voted on by the full council, and the reason why I want it the full council is because when it hits a committee, which committee, and you're limited because you may know that another council member is supportive, you may know that something else happened. So full committee or full council agrees with an idea, like let's paint a dog on the side of City Hall, right? And then it goes to whatever committee to get fully vetted policy-wise, with input, with staff, with whoever else, and then it comes back to the full council. I think that the reason for this is because, the example that was shared regarding the Economic Development Committee is that I know that there's other individuals interested and, the full council may be different. And when we talk about equity, this is kind of something that I'd like to bring up that, we to Councilmember Salinas' point, we may not all agree on the same thing or to the details of something or things like that. But at the same time, I think a council member should be able to bring something up because, again, as we've seen in the past, some people, feel more comfortable talking to one person over another. And, we represent so many different voices. So just allowing for the full council to kind of see the idea, yes, no, maybe. If it's a yes, it goes to a committee and it's worked on. And I also agree with timeline. I have no problem with saying, 2-3 months. However, it is a sufficient time for council and a subcommittee to kind of go through it a little bit further. And then the full vote on the policy. Now, when we talk about referrals, and I actually don't like the word referral because it doesn't make sense to an average person. People have referenced that there's 2 referrals, even 2 years ago, they referenced this. I think that we need to say a policy memo. And then for me, the next thing that, people say about like, hey, my fence is messed up or I need this area cleared, to me, that's a community request, right? Which I think all of us send to our city manager and whoever's, the director to take care of something like that. So I think there is a happy medium, but I personally think that it should come to the full council first for the full council to be able to review. And it allows for the public to see it. They mostly take a look at the full council agenda items, not the subcommittees. So I think that it just allows for that. And to Councilmember Marquez's point about resources, I also agree that, I know for me, for a new council member, wasn't exactly clear what that meant or whatever, because, when you first start to the time that you have your strategic meeting, it's months in between, right? And you don't actually know what's the full scope. And everyone says, we have a lot on our plate, but you don't know what that is, right? Even on your one-on-ones with our city manager and so forth. So it takes a little bit of time to learn this. So I've thought about it, and what's fair in my mind is, again, a one-page memo. Doesn't even have to be the full page. It could be 3/4 of a page. Full presentation to council. Council, yes, we agree, or half of us agree, and it looks like it took an agreement vote for 4 votes. It's documented, and then it works for the committee to work through the process. I think that's fair and sufficient, transparent, well thought out. Timeline can be discussed a little bit further and fully vetted. So that's how I see it. I know that this referral process has not worked for any of us the way that we would like it to work, but I think that's the fair trade-offs. I will also say that it should come to the full council once it's submitted to, our city manager and what's going on. Again, it's agendized. I think we had that problem too. So I think kind of like the splits a little bit, but just a little bit more clear. Thank you.
I'm going to make a suggestion here, because what I'm hearing is there needs to be some tweaks, but there's a lot of different ideas about what could possibly make this better. And I think in the past, you all have actually had formed a subcommittee to work through changes in the council handbook. And I wonder if that might be a good idea. I mean, we're an hour and 10 minutes into this already tonight. And I mean, we don't have any kind of, I don't have a sense of where you want to go. We have 4 different ideas so far. So would that be a way that you all might want to process this? This one in particular, there was energy around it to begin with, and there's clearly energy going in different directions here this evening.
I think that it should be broken apart. Like, should it go to full council or subcommittee first, right? Should it be a one-page memo or a public comment?
What I'm saying is redo it. That's your suggestion. Other people have had different suggestions tonight. My suggestion is you form a committee now to work now. You form a committee to work on updating the council handbook so that a few of you can work through this issue and come back to your colleagues with a proposal. So I got 2 thumbs up from Councilmember Zermino and a nod from Councilmember Marquez. So others, does that seem like it might be a good process for you all to work through this, Councilmember Salinas?
It'll give me heartburn, but I'll do it. Yes.
Heartburn is no fun. Councilmember Andrews, I see you raised your hand.
I was actually going to speak to something similar to what you're suggesting. There's so many different categories that we need to choose from. So I'm fine with that.
All right. So when you've done this, Mayor,
the mayor typically appoints members to the committee. I think everyone expresses if anyone has an interest in participating, and it's a sort of ad hoc subcommittee, or it's been sort of a temporary subcommittee in the past.
Well, let's do this, if we might. Let's go ahead and jump to Councilmember Andrews. Sorry.
I was just going to say that, can you also present the different options that happened in the past? Just as a new council member, it's kind of hard to track what the processes was that other council members have experienced versus the newer ones versus even me.
And I think it might be useful also to share some examples from other cities that have similar policies. So that might be something we can share with the subcommittee as well.
My suggestion would be that we push through these other topics that the majority of the council wanted to talk about. And then you all will have the notes for all of this that we can give you to have this task force to work on. Councilmember Wahab?
I could not let this go in this sense. The subcommittee, I actually have reluctance to agree to something like that because it's not transparent, number one. And what I meant by saying, if it should be coming to the full council, if it's a one-page memo, you have the ideas of kind of where it's at, but a survey should be kind of given and then brought back to the rest of council to kind of take a look at. I'm very reluctant to kind of trust this process into another subcommittee and have this drag out longer. And we can see where every council member stands and finally make a decision and move on with our lives in that sense, transparently.
Well, we have, I'd like to say something. We have to work under certain processes. One thing about the, getting 2 other members is that we have Brown Act, restraints on us, and that really could lead. It should lead us to know our fellow council members and which ones might be the most likely to agree. And then I also want to just go back to, we have a roadmap. We look at that roadmap once a year. That really is the main place where big ideas should be brought up, where big things to work on should be brought up. So the referral process is for those in-between times that I think when some issue rises to the forefront and you feel that it really needs some action right now, but otherwise we really should stick to our roadmap. So those are just a couple of comments I have in response to what other people have said. Definitely, I think resources, the consideration of time and money, staff time and money resources should be part of anything that we do consider adding on to the already pretty heavy, work plan that we have established for our staff. So a lot of suggestions have been brought up here. The only problem I have with forming a subcommittee is that as the mayor, I would be the one to appoint the committee members. And I think everybody has something to say about this. If we decide to go that way, I would like for anybody who is interested in serving on that committee to let me know that in some way first before I actually make the appointments. Are you raising your hand that you would like to?
Yes.
Okay, I kind of figured that,
And Mayor, there may be, if there's concern about doing a subcommittee on particularly the referral process, maybe we do a separate work session just on that, where we can maybe come up with a survey of the council members ahead of time that has the different ideas. Council members can weigh in on the different elements. We can bring back a few policies from different cities so council members can see how other agencies handle referrals. That way it's, more transparent. It's a full work session with the council and you guys can sort of figure. And then from there, if they're still feeling like we're not making progress towards some sort of consensus or conclusion, then maybe a subcommittee can work on drafting something from that work session.
I move on that motion.
Yeah.
I think that, I do think that would be it just would be so hard to pick 3 people to work on this because everybody seems to have some strong ideas. I think the council work session is the way to go. We've all said a lot tonight. I think we can work through this, some of the issues around this as a 7-member team, find a time when we can meet like this for a separate discussion of this issue. We've got some ideas that can form the basis of a staff report for that session. And then let's have all 7 of us be a part of it.
Okay, so we'll capture this and give that to Kelly and her team, and then they can package that, like you said, with a staff report. So let's go on to page 46, council committees. Did I miss one? I missed one. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to do, where are we?
Boards, commissions, committees, and task force?
Yeah, it just looked like somebody's.
No, we're good. Yeah. Council committees was the topic heading. Bottom of page 46. It's just all committees must comply with the Brown Act. A council member other than a council committee member may attend regular committee meetings. You see it there? The council may organize, it starts at the top of 46. The council may organize among its members standing committees. Did anyone recall why they wanted to discuss this? Councilmember Wahab.
I don't believe I brought this up, but for fun, let's I just want a little bit clarity on when we do create a committee kind of prioritization or consolidation. I feel like sometimes I personally think we have too many committees, and then that's just how I feel. And some are a little bit outdated versus some being not outdated.
So are you wanting to kind of do an inventory of the committees that you have? And
Just be able to list them. These are standing committees. These potentially, if we have an ad hoc committee, it's only for this period of time. Small things like that. Like obviously we know the budget committee is a standing committee, things like that. So just clarifying that a little bit more. I don't believe that that's really there, to be honest with you. It's not listed, for the most part.
Provide that clarity of here's the standing ones and ad hoc time.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this handbook is for an average person to understand what's going on, and I don't think that we sometimes make it as simple as day for people.
Gotcha. Anybody else on this one? No. All right. Page 48. Boards, commissions, committees, and task forces. Does anyone recall the issue that they wanted to address here?
And I don't know if we're going to do it. I don't think we'll do it tonight, but I know we need to talk about the role of the CAP and to time that. The community advisory panel for the police department. And then also we have to update with the language from Measure NN or OO. Sorry, I forget which one was which.
I would recommend that maybe we wait until after the policy innovation workshops to have the discussion about the CAP, because I think, I just want to give that process an opportunity to play out, because there may be some recommendations that come out of those work groups. And if not, then I think then we can come back to the council and have a discussion with the council about the role of the CAP and how any modifications that the council wants to make.
That makes all the sense in the world. What the one thing I want to acknowledge is, maybe we need some language in the recruitment, just to sort of allow some language in the recruitment that, this is the 2-year mark of CAP. And so I'm thinking that one of the commissions that we go out for recruitment for in April will be the CAP. Maybe that's a point of discussion. I don't know.
It's a completely separate recruitment process that was set up in their bylaws. So that's why I wanted it's an interview process with the mayor, me, and the police chief. And it's very different from the typical board and commission recruitment. So that's why I was really hesitant to even mention it in the board and commission general recruitment, because I think I would like to have a further conversation with the council about that. And if you want to make changes, I just didn't want to get it confused, because they do have bylaws, they do have a process for recruitment. So that was my concern with including it in the board and commission recruitment process.
Okay, I didn't remember about the bylaws. I did know we did it different the first time because we were inventing it from scratch, but my impression was that we would then roll it into this process. So I'm fine with revisiting this topic once the policy innovation work is done, and just didn't want to lose track of it. I think there may be just some language cleanup regarding the charter amendment thing that's just that may already have been covered. And then the other one thing that I wanted to put out there for discussion or just sort of flag, was based on a comment we got at the last council meeting around representation and inclusion of folks who are Indigenous, and the idea that we may want to prioritize some recruitment, especially for planning commission regarding these populations. We have, we have a requirement from HUD that folks who are low income have a voice at the table in the CSC, because the money affects that population. And the idea that there is some priority or specific targeted outreach to communities who are native to the area for land use seems like something we might want to think about. And I don't have proposed language tonight, but just wanted to put it out there to hear what my colleagues had to say. Thank you.
Mayor Holiday.
Yeah, what did I want to say? I've been listening to the discussion. I was going to just clarify that the handbook, we're talking about the handbook tonight. Well, the handbook is a standing document that probably would not include temporary or, ad hoc type committees, which other than to say they can be established from time to time and maybe have some rules around them. But we have very much altered our committee structure since I started on council, and we've done away with committees and we've started new committees. And I think, I don't know, do we really want to update the handbook every time that we, have a new, and I think we probably do when we have a standing committee, like sustainability came along at some point a few years ago. Downtown, we had a downtown committee that was abolished, and we developed the economic development committee, and we have changes. Also, I do think some of these are actually, if I'm not mistaken, and I think the city attorney is with us this evening, isn't he? That some of this is in the charter too. So we'll need to look at that and see what's there and whether we're even following that at the moment. I don't think the charter forbids us from having new committees or different committees, but I think it might actually mention some. I know it mentions some of the commissions.
Planning Commission, I think, is mentioned specifically, and I'm trying to think. There's maybe a couple others, but I think Planning Commission is probably one of the only ones that's actually specifically mentioned. It looks like Michael is on as well.
Mayor and Council, the charter does call out initial committees, but the charter also allows the council to create and abolish committees. Planning Commission is also required under state planning law, so it is somewhat unique as compared to other committees.
Okay, we're gonna call on Councilor Member Wahab and then Zermino. I'm gonna turn my camera off for a minute. My colleague Catherine is still here. I just need to run down the hall real quick.
So who's gonna take notes?
Oh, Catherine is taking notes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. We're a team. We're a team.
No. I thought both of you guys were leaving for a second. Sorry.
No. We got you. She's here.
All right. Yeah, no, for boards and commissions, I think transparency has become the big issue, even with CAP. So if it's a small temporary committee, if it's ad hoc, whatever it is, I think that it should be subject to the Brown Act and, just transparency overall. I do want to highlight that. So whether we talk about it today or tomorrow, that's definitely something I'd like to do. I'd also like it for we expand the opportunity to serve in a committee to all people. And more importantly, if somebody has served in, let's say, a committee term twice, whether it's, one committee and then joined another one shortly after and had two separate commissions, or the same committee for 2 terms, I think that should be the max. And then there has to be a breather room because, we want to be able to give that extra seat to whoever would like to do it that has not done it. I think that allows some space. I know that our city clerk works hard on kind of recruitment, and I know we had like 100 people almost apply last time, and we can only appoint so many, right? So just being able to make sure that we give opportunities out there, because there is something called an opportunity gap, and I do believe it's in these things as well. So just highlighting that, but other than that, also just taking a look at our committee, seeing how efficient and how productive they are as well, and seeing that pretty closely and monitoring that. I think that's also important. As well as individual commissioners, just because I think that's been a topic in the past. But and then how many committees do we want? Are we gonna? I know our mayor has talked about an arts commission, and arts and music, I think is the thing that she definitely wants. I know, right? And I know many of us have all said yes, but I haven't seen it come about. So things like that. If we do say yes, when is it going to come? Right? Because that's consensus on the council. So just my 2 cents.
That's probably the kind that's probably the kind of things that would come during the roadmap.
Our referral.
or a referral.
I like giving you a hard time, Mayor.
No, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll try it.
All right, Councilmember Zermanius.
I'm a growing boy, so I'm my video's off because I'm having dinner because I cannot make it. Otherwise, the wind will blow me away if I don't eat. My comment is our Attorney Lawson mentioned that the language for committees to abolish and create is in the charter. And my question to the group is, do we need such language in this handbook? And my comment is that we certainly have thrown the word around transparency a lot today. We've been quite transparent, except for closed session items. We certainly are not the Star Chamber. I don't know if you remember that movie with Michael Douglas. Anyway, so do we need establishing and abolishing committee language, committees language in this handbook? And it doesn't have to be necessarily for transparency.
I mean, this is a book that is a resource for you all, right? So it's you know, do you need it in there if it's also in the charter? That's a good point.
So maybe it's not needed, I suppose.
Do you want us to answer individually, or just that's a?
I'm throwing it out for discussion.
Yes.
I think if the language is there, it's good for, you know, a council member to understand how something's created and eventually removed as well. To me, this is, again, as she said, a resource, especially for new council members.
So a link to the charter, would that be a good way to handle it? Or a link to the charter language, like we have links in other places? I got a thumbs up there, okay.
I think that would be useful.
So there's a suggestion made, so I guess we need 4 nods in order to include it in the handbook. So we have 1 nod. We need 3 more.
I'm not sure if we're voting on anything right now.
We're not voting tonight.
Yeah.
This will come back.
I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
But I'm having a glass of wine with some brie cheese, and it's just delicious.
Okay, now we're going to all have to hurry up because Francisco just made me really hungry.
Even for the charter, especially for folks, appendix, I think, you know, whatever style we use, if that's consistent throughout the handbook. So link to something, appendix. I think appendix for new people, it's great. And if this is a PDF and, you know, we're not printing paper, and that's fine. It can be updated pretty quickly, and, you know, PDF is great to use.
All right. Other thoughts on this? I don't see any hands. Okay, so let me tell you where we are. I think we have gone through the sections that most folks or multiple people indicated they wanted to talk about. It's 6:30. I don't know what your time constraints are. You want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
We did collect 1 comment on proclamations already. There are 5 other areas that at least one person indicated they wanted to chat about. Do you all want to push through these this evening?
Well, we could try to see how, you know, let's try to have 7 being a sort of stopping time for tonight, if that's okay with everybody.
Okay, so we'll go to, and so I'm going to try to do this kind of quick. And I would say, you know, if you have something that you wanted to bring up, great. But if it's quiet and we don't need to comment on everything, try to push through. So proclamations, we already got language about streamlining this process and adding an appendix. Anything else on proclamations? Councilmember Andrews, and then Wahab.
Just confirming the differences between proclamation resolutions. I agree with Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Wahab about that.
Okay, thank you.
And on your previous slide, I will say that again, I know I talked on each item. I have not selected any of the items, but I did want to highlight that just the differences again, right? If we are going to use this as a resource for a new council member, that was very confusing at the very beginning. And just clarity again for pretty much all of it. And I think our city attorney explained quasi judicial and things like that. So that I'm going to say that for all the items that was listed in the previous slide.
Okay, so just it's really about, we just need to clarify what the differences are to make it kind of a
yep.
for a new council. Think about the new council member, have them in mind when we're doing this. Okay, thank you. Mayor Halliday.
I was just going to bring up that we're not ready for it yet, but we have talked about when we go back to the new normal, or when we go to the new normal, whatever that is, right there. I'm looking at page 35 of the handbook about public comments, and I'm just putting it out there that if we do make some changes, which I think we've talked about doing and probably want to do based on the experience we've had for the last year of, allowing people to make comments from, a distant location, or, from their homes, call in. We're going to have to revise this section of the handbook. And I just wanted to put that out there that that is something we should be thinking about, and that when we do get to discussing that, and maybe it can be part of this discussion about the handbook, that we'll have to update it in here.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll probably work on over the August recess this year, as we sort of plan to come back to some sort of hybrid style meeting in September with council in person and, allowing for virtual participation still.
Okay, should we move on to quasi-judicial? So again, we'll keep that comment about clarification up front. Anything else on this one? Quasi-judicial hearings, page 24. Okay, rules, decorum, and order. Page 29.
Yeah, I think I flagged this one.
Okay.
And would appreciate some help on. I struggle with council meetings being used as a platform for political speeches and rhetoric and things that may not be entirely true. Those are separate things. I'm not saying that's all the same thing. And I know we struggle with how do we handle that? And I don't know if it was the culture of the council in the past to not have that be part of the thing. And somebody gets impassioned about an item and they end up going off. And I'm going to try not to do that now. But it happens, but that the norm for the council, my opinion, is about the business of the council. There are plenty of places for us as council members to make speeches. This is not that. I don't know how to capture that in language, and I wanted to offer. I mean, I definitely want to hear from my colleagues about thoughts about that.
Sometimes I see that. I'm just going to go back and look at your council meetings section. I usually see that as kind of an introductory statement about the purpose of the meeting is the business of the city. So I'm struggling with your document here. Councilmember Andrews and then Mayor Halliday. There we go. Yep. Go ahead.
I look at everything with an equity lens, so it's very hard for me to separate the political just because my skin is political. So everything is political. So it's very hard for me not to connect the dots there. So, I try to limit my comments and try to be concise, be respectful of time, but I feel that that's why people are elected is to speak from a different lens, from a different point of view. So I would be very careful in terms of how we limit people's comments. Now, if it's something that's totally unrelated, I totally get that. If we're just saying something just to say something, I get that, and that's what public comment's for. But if you can connect the dots, and it doesn't take all night, then I don't see an issue with it, just because that's how people make decisions sometimes.
Mayor Halliday.
I just, Councilmember Lemon, were you talking about council members during meetings or anybody?
No, definitely not talking. I mean, my preference for public comments is not that they're political speeches. You know, people should not be campaigning for office in chambers. That's not legal. But and people should not be campaigning for office from the dais either. And so, you know, being angry about an issue, being excited about an issue, that's not speech I want to curtail. But the using a council agenda as a way to move forward somebody's own political agenda, that's the piece. And it is nuanced. It is, you know, not, you know, if what we're proposing is unjust and therefore needs to be called out as such, that's one thing. Anyway, I'll stop.
Well, I mean, what it brought to my mind is that when discussing an issue, council members should be encouraged. I mean, all of this is advisory, and then, as the mayor, I have some prerogative to interrupt, and I have, and people don't like that. People in the public have commented on that, and yet it is my job, and so I have tried to, enforce the rules in as nice a way as possible, but. What I see happening is that we're on an issue, we're discussing the issue, and somebody just goes off on some complete, maybe somewhat tenuously related issue, but it really isn't germane to the item at hand. And I'm not singling anybody out here. I think we all probably do it at times, and that is what I would like a way of at least stating, somewhere in the handbook that, council members should, when commenting, keep their focus on the issue at hand, and the discussion at hand. Or it's a hard thing to state, really, but I've seen it happen. The one thing is that we don't. I don't know where this was, but I believe that there was something in there in the handbooks that I saw today about limiting comments by council members to 5 minutes. Did I make that up or something? Because I didn't think we had any limit, but maybe we want to consider that,
Yes.
I know that council member Salinas has voluntarily offered to set his own, and he said 7. And actually, I know where it was. It was in the section about, it's because it seemed to separate after questions are answered, limit your comments on an item to 5 minutes. Now we have separate times for questions, and then then we're supposed to have the public hearing, and then we have the comments, and that is something that I have enforced too, that I have stepped in and said, wait a minute, this is for questions only, because we need to wait until we have the public hearing to make our comments about the issue. But that section needs to be, I'd like to see some real beefing up of just what we expect of council members during meetings, that you follow the order and that you stick to the subject at hand and not go off on some tangent.
Yeah, read that section here from page 33 into the slide there, Mayor, so you can see that. But that's so that you're talking about beefing that up in general. Okay. Councilmember Zermino and then Marquez.
Thank you. This is really a touchy subject, in that it then borders on controlling our colleagues. I would rather not do that, but I would just simply ask or request that we all, as our mayor says, stay in line with what we are discussing. ask our questions without any prefaces or preface to the preface. Just be direct. And we did that to the Greater Hayward Democratic Club because we would allow questions from the floor, and by the time they came to the question, it was 3 minutes later. So it's just get to the meat of the issue. But it really needs to be. We really need to be careful so that we don't make our colleagues feel hindered or duct taped in any way. So let's just stay to the issue at hand. Thank you for bringing it up, Sarah, colleague Lamnan, but it is a difficult one. It really is. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Marquez?
Thank you, Councilmember Lamnan, for raising this. It is a very delicate topic, but I do agree. I have my failures as well of, making comments when I should be making questions. So I do appreciate when the mayor reminds us of that, to stay on task, stay focused. So unfortunately, Mayor, I think we need more of that. It has to be very consistent. It feels very hit or miss. I know you've got a tough role, but I think if we can all be reminded and be consistent with that, we'll see improvement. I definitely don't want to curtail anyone's free speech. Everyone has a right to their opinion, but I do feel strongly that we do need to stay on topic. And I think any one of us can make our comments within 5 to 7 minutes. There are times individuals speak 15, 20 minutes on almost every item. That is unacceptable. It's been a long time, but there was a period of time where we were meeting till like midnight nearly every Tuesday. And the public is frustrated. They want to hear other items on the agenda. They don't want to wait on hold, even if it is virtually, until 10, 11 o'clock. So the best we can do to be mindful of that. There are other ways to express your thoughts and opinion to the public, but I think we all just need to be as succinct and concise as we possibly can. Thank you.
I don't know if you all remember when we had our session and John Nalbandian presented his workshop. There's two things that come to mind that I hear John saying in my head. One of them is you all have a right to speak. Like you said, you don't want to limit that. But you earn the right to be listened to. And at a certain point, when your colleagues are tuning out, then, are you being effective? And then the other is that reminder that your most important constituents are one another if you want to get anything done. And so kind of that remembrance to make sure you're not inadvertently tuning out those people who you really want to have listening to you, because it's their vote that's going to make a difference on the policy that you're trying to put forward. So I say, Councilmember Wahab, you have a hand up.
I know I have struggled with this primarily just because moving from new to eventually getting used to things and, trying to make your points. So I know that it is a learning curve. So I'd be reluctant to say, a hard and fast rule, but obviously, people are trying to get better at it, right? That's one. And then number two is the fact that I would also have to agree. Sometimes, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to do questions, and then it goes straight to comments. And then I'm like, okay, I had like a laundry list of questions, right? So I know that has thrown me off sometimes. And it's just, I guess a little bit more training around, when do we do this? When do we do that? When do we do whatever? And if this handbook has it at like the first page, and I know I've asked our city clerk, can she walk me through it, right? I think that's important. And then at the same time, we deal with a lot of political issues in the sense of, when we talk about public safety, that's kind of like a touchy subject, right? And so you want to be careful what you say, but at the same time, explain your thought process on it. So that's always very difficult. And then even on for example, I'm going to give the cannabis as an example. The last time we talked about cannabis, we had like 22 items that we had to make a decision on. And I like that because it was broken down and we knew exactly what we're, number one, I think this, number two, I think that. I really liked it, but it was also extremely long. It was like 22 items, 19 items, something like that. So being able to balance that as well. So those are my comments on it. It's just, it takes time to learn, and, hopefully we can all do better.
Councilmember Andrews?
I was just going to thank Councilmember Lamnin for bringing it up because I know it wasn't an easy thing to bring up. And I'm definitely going to think about being effective in my communication, but also being on point and on target, and not as an opportunity to explain all of race relations in every single topic that I do, but just to focus on what the issue is at hand. But I probably still will be connecting the dots.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the comment. It was put very succinctly, to use that word, what Councilmember Andrews referred to as being Black is political. Her skin color is political. And, being Latino is political. When there's when there's federal issues or state issues that directly impact Latinos, what we say, how we articulate, that informs us. And so, we're mindful of that. And I know that I don't think anyone here is, and I don't think that was the intent of Councilmember Lamnin's comments, to restrict or to limit or to narrow the scope or any of that. And I think if anything, it's, given, members the flexibility to do their job, right, on the dais and to be a council member, but also, respecting, respecting each other, and also respecting each other's professionalism. And I'll say this, and this will be my last point. And I know it was referenced a little while ago. Things like transparency has been used, not only with us, but transparency is a term I wish we can come up with another word for it, because transparency has been overly used at every level of government. The other one is the equity. And, when I hear people use the term equity, quite frankly, I don't think people really understand what the word equity really means. And I think what I see oftentimes, and it happens even at our meetings. I see it at school board meetings. I see it at, other municipal government meetings, where colleague, each other's or their colleagues, stripes or indirectly or sort of nuanced, sort of challenge that if you don't say a certain thing or if you don't do a certain thing, then you're not transparent or you're not equitable. And so, I think how we frame issues and how we respect each other's, framing of issues, I think, I guess that's part of the professionalism and to go back to this word that I used earlier, this sort of thing that council members have, it's this level of professionalism that I think we have to, we have to practice, it's part of our practice. And so, and sometimes, not to, sometimes we can't write it in a book. We can't write it in a handbook. It's just it's a level of professionalism that people have and people acquire over years of experience. But so anyways, if that makes any sense, I'll leave it at that.
Mayor Halliday.
To Councilmember Wahab about being confused. I can completely understand that as a new person and not being used, but I think we need to strive to lay it out in this handbook how the order goes, and that questions really need to be limited to questions. And I don't want to call you out, but you have used the question part of your time to make to really make a statement or make an argument, and that isn't what it's for. You're absolutely entitled and encouraged to make your argument, but that is after the public hearing. And I think that that you don't do that. I haven't seen you do that recently. So I mean, I think you're past that, and it's certainly understandable that there's a learning curve. We handle work sessions a little bit differently. Maybe all this needs to be laid out a little bit better in the handbook for new members. I know everybody, gets the handbook, and that should be the first thing a new council member reads. But it is really important. I mean, when people in the public are waiting to make their comments, and they're time limited, so they can say whatever they want, but they're going to be cut off at the end of those number of minutes, however many it is. But we don't cut council members off. But I just, would want people to respect the order. And so questions, just limit it to if you really have a question about the staff report that needs to be clarified. If you want to make arguments based on those questions, the time to do that is after the public comment. And then work sessions, I felt it really, because we're not making decisions that night, we've kind of gone to a system where we have the staff presentation, and then we immediately go to the public comment, and then we go to council questions and comments. So that's when you might combine the two. But it's not necessarily all laid out right now. So maybe we can try to do a better job of laying it out so people really understand how that how it flows.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes, I remember on Planning Commission, it was really helpful to have this outline, and we knew exactly where we were at during the item. So it said question, comments. I know we in general have it, but I was thinking in this Zoom environment, maybe throw up a slide and say questions, and then we can refer back to other slides if we need to reference them, but always have that reminder as a shared screen, if that's possible.
And what does your daughter think we should do? I heard her making a comment there.
About dinner. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. And like I said, I don't think it was clearly laid out. I don't think that this handbook was clearly laid out. It's been updated recently, but I know when I started, it was a little bit confusing to the point where I had to go to the city clerk and ask her, what is the standard protocol? And it didn't seem to be the same every single time, because I was making notes to make sure. I do think that if we do have it where staff presentations, they have the PowerPoint, it should be, okay, council questions, right? And then, we know. Also, again, like I said, it hasn't been uniform, and that's been the challenge. So I'm glad that we had an updated handbook, but we still have to improve this process overall, just for clarity.
Okay. I think Councilmember Salinas, Mayor Halliday, and Councilmember Andrews might want to put their hands down unless you've put them up again. I think they were holdovers. Anything else? That's okay. Anything else on this one? If not, we'll move on to motions, page 39. We've got 3 more sections to get through. Motions, ordinances, and council liaisons. So what's the issue on motions, page 39? Hearing none. Move on. I've got Councilmember Wahab's kind of overview comment of making sure the language is clear and distinguishing between these items. Ordinances, page 44. Councilmember Wahab?
Yeah, again, just for all of these, it's just the transparency of like what it is, right? When does it come at play? I think, one of the issues that I know I bumped into is that when you vote on something and then it comes down the second time, when it's on consent and you see it. So our city clerk did clarify that, but it was after kind of like a controversy at council that didn't need to be a controversy, right? And so just these types of things, it's like, what is the process? But very clearly, it will fall into this section on the second council meeting. And we pulled that away, so it's a lot easier to follow, but just highlighting that again.
Okay, thank you. And that's it. Anybody else? Council member liaisons, page 47.
I just want to go back to that last one, the ordinances, because I remember now that what the confusion was about. There's a process we have that if an ordinance was approved unanimously and then needs a second reading, it'll go on the consent calendar. But if it wasn't unanimous, then it actually should come back on the regular calendar. I mean, as a regular item, because so that the person who voted against it the first time doesn't, inadvertently vote for it on the consent calendar the second time. That was the issue, and it would be good to lay that out. I remember when that came up.
Okay, so thank you. All right, back to council liaison then, which is on page 47. Anybody have a comment on this? Councilmember Wahab.
Sorry, I haven't really served in this capacity. I have, but I haven't. But just the feedback. So Councilmember Zermenio does like a cool thing where he kind of will, through our city clerk, forward the minutes, right, of whatever meeting he's a part of, right? And I think Councilmember Marquez kind of says, hey, I was part of the mosquito abatement meeting, and here's kind of a special announcement, if it's something like, pertaining to good news to all of us that we need to know. Just a little bit of the feedback from being a liaison, right? I think that'd be nice, whether it's even one sentence on the agenda or an email, whatever's easier. But I personally like that when my colleagues do that. I think that should just kind of be standard as well.
So that it does come under council reports or announcements. That is the agenda item. Do you want to separate it out maybe as reports and?
No, just kind of keeping up with the habit. I think that if
okay.
Yeah, it's not consistent. So if we can just do that, it'd be nice to see what's happening that when we're not there.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good practice. Yeah, it's good.
All right, anything else? All right, you did it, and it's 7:01, so
yay.
Well done, you guys. We will be pulling our notes together with some comments in the document and getting it back to Kelly and her team. And it sounds like you'll have a little bit of work to do on the referral process at perhaps another work session. So thanks for having us back this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Oh, we still have public comment.
Oh, there we go.
Public comment.
When we switch up the schedule.
I don't see any hands. Okay, public comments. I don't see any hands raised, and we have 2 attendees. So, and Madam City Clerk, you didn't have any. I will say that I was speaking with someone the other day, and I was going to talk to you about this, Madam City Clerk, but perhaps we could be a little more clear about what to expect when we have public comments on the user end. And I know that I think a council member also recently commented on the length of time. Sometimes it takes somebody to get on. So maybe we'll work on doing a little bit better job when we start public comments of explaining what people can expect if they're trying to get on especially by the phone. And
Yes, Mayor. Maybe going back to what we were doing initially, where we say how they could, if they are calling, how to raise their hand and all of that. Yes, definitely we could. I know that we changed that process with the video that we play at the beginning, but I think a good idea
brief
to.
reminder when we get to public comments of what, if you're, I mean, I can't do it because I'm attending the meeting this way usually, but I think it's, I think when I've been at other meetings, like you're going to see something that says unmute yourself. And that's when you should do that and be on or something. Because, people, can you hear me? And, anyway, we'll work on that. I just wanted to make that as a public comment. And with that, unless anyone else has any.
And I just wanted to make sure, I know we have one person who is attending. So this is the time to raise your hand if you like to speak. I know the other participant is from my office, so I know the other participant is not an attendee, but just wanted to make sure that the person doesn't want to comment.
Okay, I think Councilmember Andrews has one too.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to remind everyone that Earth Month Challenge is starting April 1st. So you can go to hayward-ca.gov/earth-day, or I think that's how it is, right? Yes. So you can sign up and you can see all the activities that will be happening there. And then also Keep Hayward Cleaning and Green will be doing a cleanup in July. So you'll see people back out there. So yeah, just wanted to heads up. I'll bring more details later when it comes.
What neighborhood in July?
Heritage Plaza, so downtown area. Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. Appreciate all the thought about the Earth Day events. Those are exciting. And just because this council passed the resolution regarding a fair and inclusive redistricting process in Alameda County, thank you very much for doing that. Wanted to give people a heads up that Tuesday's Board of Supervisors is supposed to have a special meeting. Latest information I had was about 2:00, although do check the website, that they are supposed to have a work session talking about what their redistricting process is. And so if you have opinions about how that should work, that may be a good opportunity to chime in. And when I see the agenda, I'll send it to Colleen to be shared with everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zermeño.
Yes, thank you very much. I spent 3 summers working the fields of the lettuce fields over in Salinas Valley, and tomorrow is Cesar Chavez's birthday. So I would like all of you to remember him and to remember all the good folks who are toiling out there in the fields, in the very hot fields. Very difficult job. That's when I decided to work with my head instead of my back. So, good meeting today, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I wish we could have our usual gathering, but maybe someday. Okay, anyone else with that? I'll just note that our next meeting is a week from tonight. It'll be a regular meeting on April 6th at 7 p.m. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Night.